Good morning, good morning, good morning. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Game Design Cuppa. I'm your host, Matthew Dunstan. Hope you're doing rather well this Wednesday, the 10th of February. It's 10 o'clock in the morning here in Prague, and a pretty grey kind of day, as is the norm for winter, I guess. But yeah, how is everyone doing today in this fine world? It's still quite snowy, although we didn't get. I don't think we got any more extra snow over the overnight. Morning, Alex. How are you going? We'll be driving and listening for a bit. Excellent. I will, yes, do my best as a radio show, you know, shock jock or whatever. Try and say something controversial, maybe. No. Yeah, I remember when I was younger, I worked like quite young and worked a sort of part-time job in a retail store. A few elderly ladies came up to me one day. It's like, you should be on the radio. You have such a lovely voice for it. So, you know, I missed a career there. Maybe I don't know, but yes, yes. I think it's still pretty cold. I didn't look at oh, it's actually -10 right now. Wow, would not have guessed that actually. I mean, again, thank goodness for insulation, I guess. But yeah, so yeah, that is quite chilly, and it will get to a high of -8. How lovely for today. Morning, Vass. How you going? How you going? Yeah, so it's third straight day streaming. As is, yeah, the weeks where I'm on Bez's stream on the Tuesday are a little bit busier than normal. No, I'm not a full-time streamer, so even having 2 mornings in a row is a bit of a thing, but that's fine. So hope wherever you are, you can grab your you know, your favorite hot beverage. I have some green tea today with a puncia, which I guess is some sort of flour. I've never known what it actually is, but I've enjoyed it, I guess. Oh, it's a prickly pear, maybe, it seems. Maybe. Yeah, okay, so it's a sort of like prickly pear in green tea, I think, possibly. I don't know if that makes sense. Maybe that's a little bit strange. I don't know. Yeah, so what's been going on in games for everyone? We played another game of First Class last night. We tried the first game because it's a game with modules, so you basically choose 2 modules every time to play, and that's what gives you hopefully a lot of variety in the game. And in the first game we chose A and B, which is the recommended start. And yesterday we played with A and D, so we're slowly working our way through the modules, trying out different things. Still quite enjoyable. It's sort of like a card. Yeah, it's very much a card game version of Russian Railroads, but a lot quicker. Like actually very, very breezy. You only take 18 turns in the entire game, and most turns are just take a card, do a thing. So yeah, it's all fairly straightforward. No, but we enjoyed it, which was good. And yeah, for those who missed the stream with Bez yesterday, we had a lot of fun with Bez and Alan Paul. We actually designed a game, which is, I guess, the point of a game jam, which is still going on Bez over on Bez's channel, and I guess we'll raid at the end of this stream. But we sort of came up with sort of it started off thinking about like a deduction sort of battleships game or something like that, where you're trying to narrow down where something is in a grid, and we were thinking about how you get clues that sort of work together, a bit like Tobago or Cryptid or things like this. And we got to the point actually where you could have a game, kind of like a roll and write game or a flip and fill game, where each player is trying to find their own thing on their map, but they don't have to be in the same place. So basically you're putting together clues, but you can use them how you want, and it's sort of a race to like get to only one space left in each quadrant. Yeah, and actually we actually played it through on the stream. Morning, Rob. How are you going? I hope you're doing well. And incredibly, it wasn't too bad. And I think we have some very clear ways in which to sort of iterate on. And I think Bez is hoping to play all the designs from the game jam on the weekend. So the boot's on my foot, so to speak, to do a new version of the game. And I don't think there has to be too much more to be done. I think actually the main thing is going to be designing the map so that it makes sense with the clues. It's one of these things where the design of the map. I actually quite like that. The games where you have a map and there's a lot of data on the map, And that moment where you realize, like in the first iteration of the game, you know, because we literally threw it together on stream, so I was very quickly just putting something together. I wasn't really thinking about it very much, but once you have the parameters, you realize what you have to worry about, and you have a bit of a formula to be thinking, why would I choose a map to be a certain way? Why would I have these elements arranged the way they are? So in this case, you know, I have to make sure that basically every space on the map has an equal chance of being used by clues, or like it can be referenced by the same number of clues, so they're sort of equally like available to be crossed off. We found out that there were like a few squares on this current map that couldn't be crossed off with any clue, which is a bit of a problem. So, but once you know that, then you can, then it's just mathematics, or it's just, you know, it's sort of gone from design to sort of content or something. It's like, you know the rule, you just have to do it. It's not you don't have to be creative at that point in a way. Which is good. It's nice to have made that, and that's actually quite fast to have kind of realized what we need to be doing. And I'm actually really happy with the game. I'm not sure if anyone was watching the stream, but I haven't done that many game jams. I didn't participate in Michael's game jam earlier this year, and I didn't really do it in, you know, before COVID times. But so I guess I wasn't necessarily. What was the thing? I wasn't expecting that we would come up with it again. And I you know, you never know. I think, you know, but actually, yeah, I'm actually pretty happy with it, and I think there's a couple of things that we can try immediately that I think will make the game a lot smoother. And honestly, I think it's something that I could easily see pitching to a publisher. Actually, I think it's a really good form factor at the moment, and it's pretty straightforward. You know, a small deck of cards, you know, pad of sheets. Yeah, I think it could really fit in the kind of like the roll and write kind of mold. So yeah, I seem to be just making a lot of roll and write games at the moment, which is what this pandemic is leading us all to do, I guess. But I don't think the fad's going away. I mean, you look at NSV, you know, if we look on Board Game Geek, like they just did a post of all the new NSV games that are getting released. Well, I mean, I guess now or in, you know, later in February or something like that. I can bring it up on the screen here. And morning, Rory. How are you going? I was chatting a little bit about the game jam from yesterday on Bez's stream, and just like how it seems like roll and writes are never going away. Because yeah, I mean, because NSV, which is published in Germany, I mean, ever since Quicks, which I don't know when Quicks was. Quicks, is that how you spell it? Yeah, 2012. So that's almost 10 years really of like roll and writes. And you know, there's Hashi from Jeff Allers, which I sort of talked about before, based on these logic puzzles. We've actually made a first prototype of our new game that we're working on together, another roll and write, sort of Western themed game, which has started pretty well. There's another roll, so that's 2 roll and writes. There's another, and then they've got all these minis now, which are mostly roll and writes. So 2 more roll and writes. This one isn't a roll and write. So these aren't, but that's fine. So and this is now, so like of the games, like 5 of them are roll and writes that they've announced. So yeah, it doesn't seem like the craze is going away. I think there was a point where you know, I can't remember when I was sort of talking to publishers, and I think we were sort of musing like, is this going to be is this a fad, and is it going to sort of flame out at some point, or is it really just going to become a new genre that you'll just see more and more games? And I think something is similar with, say, escape room or narrative games. I don't know if that. I think that it's a genre that's here to stay. I think it you know, attracts a completely different audience, and I think roll and writes are similar. And it's interesting also because I sort of argue that, I mean, and no offense to NSV, but like these games aren't particularly, like, looking at them, they're not exactly like out of the box sort of things. But they're still, you know, there's still an audience even for this very, I would say, very like conventional roll and write style of game. You know, these kind of like crossing off boxes in a very abstract way and things like that, which is kind of what NSV's thing is, to be honest. But yeah, as Rory said, there's way more that can be done with roll and writes, and I completely, as Rory agrees, and I agree. I think there's a lot more to be done, and I think also, you know, production wise, they're still fairly cheap to make, and the small form factors are good, very portable. vote and write. I mean, isn't that how voting actually works? Probably. It's like the roll and write voting system. Yeah, so that's interesting actually. So I guess I'm not that worried about making a lot of roll and writes. I mean, I had resisted for quite a while, but we'll have the Kickstarter for the Dice Hospital roll and write soon, probably in the next few months. I signed a roll and write with Blue Orange, which will come out, I guess, next year probably. So yeah, it's I'll see what it's like. I mean, and it's a style of game that I play a lot still. We play Metro X a lot, which is a really fantastic roll and write game. But there's a lot that we play. And we played like Quinto, some of the old NSV titles, Quinto and Quicks. We played a lot in the days. Rory said, "Have we seen a roll and write legacy game yet? That feels like an obvious direction." I don't know. Was there a Button Shy competition that was a legacy game? But maybe that was for an 18 card legacy game. I mean, I guess so. But it's interesting. Well, no, we have seen somewhat of a legacy game because the what was that called? There was a Kickstarter for two. It was something from Jason Tagmeyer. It wasn't Button Shy though. It was like two roll and write books. I'm trying to find it now. Yeah, Blood Royals. This is it. So these books were these roll and write books essentially, and there was a legacy element definitely to this this Blood Royals one especially, I think, because you would essentially have like the realm would, yeah, I think you would like it, Rory, actually. And also, like, I think you would appreciate I think there was very clean graphic design. I actually have the, if I stop sharing, actually, I'm pretty sure that I did back it. I backed it at the sort of print and play level, but unfortunately, in retrospect, maybe I should have actually got the printed thing, because it just means that you never actually, you never you never actually print it off, because it's sort of color ink with these things. I have absolutely no idea where it is though. Shelf. Oh wow. I just looking through my files and I found a completely new sort of trove of old game designs. Would you believe? I don't know if you can hold on, share screen. That one. Yeah, I don't know. I was looking at, I have like a game design folder, and I usually throw, and if I'll spiel press, this is it. Oh wow, okay, so I could also just find it immediately when I who would have thought? Yeah, so this is Blood Royals, and I'm just trying to look and see. Yeah, because you basically are supposed to play the sheets in order, like through different ages, and they'll affect. I'm trying to see if I can find. Yeah, I think it then will tell you how things change from game to game. This doesn't have the yeah, but it looks like this, and there's different things that happens like in age 2 and things, and depending on who wins it, because it's a two player game. And the other one was this Star Maps, which I'm not sure if it was. I don't think it was as. I think you're still supposed to play it in order, and essentially they do introduce new rules as you go, because you can see, like, I think there's this map guide. Does it change? Yeah, the map guide kind of changes, and you have new maps and things as you go on with new rules. So yeah, that's Star Maps and Blood Royals from what were they called? They were called the Spiel Press. And I don't know actually if they ended up doing anything more. But no, the only other point is that I don't look through my folders very often, and I found this interesting thing called Shelf, and I was like, what is Shelf? And it turns out that, here we go, here's a bunch of things that are even older game designs. So I think I was wondering, like, why I didn't see older games in my folder. So here's stuff from 2011. This is really when I would have started when I really would have started designing games, basically. So, you know, these are way back in terms of it's some sort of Greek kind of game with various bits and pieces. So yeah, this is definitely it will be a interesting thing to look back on in terms of maybe another stream looking back at old games. So anyway, that was a bit of a. So yes, I think that check out Spiel Press anyway. I think they've done some really interesting things. Yeah. A library below the library basement. Exactly. Yeah, it's sort of like the hidden. Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, it makes. I mean, of course, now I remember it, but it's just sort of funny that I didn't. Yeah, that I didn't think. You know that. Yeah, I just had forgotten about it actually. And I even have some documents with some rules and things, and like, wow, yeah. So it's basically 10 years old. All these games. but going back in time, yeah, interesting. So yeah, what's everyone else up to today, or if you have any, as always, any questions, any comments about the gaming world? I'm sort of, I guess I'm your like, you know, I'm almost like, what is a talk show host or something, you know, for an hour, and I'll take caller questions or something. That's where they keep the sole surviving copy of the Dunstan Monocon. Yeah. It'd be interesting to see if any of these games actually did end up becoming. Yeah, I have like a cooperative deck building RPG and a Mancala microgame. These had better names than a lot of the other things, to be honest. There was also, I remember I was trying to. It was like, it's taking me back. There was so AEG had, and I guess this was like what year was that AEG? In 2013. So they had this. AEG had this idea that they wanted to make a series of linked Euro games, but they weren't linked mechanically necessarily. They'd be linked by having the same world, and it was called. So the games that ended up getting published was Dominare. I should find it on. Was it Dominare or something? What are they called? It was just Dominare. Yeah, here, Dominare. Yeah, this is it. So these were the games, and they were in this. Yes, the city-state of Tempest. That was the idea. So essentially, these games were all linked with the same world, but the games themselves were different. And I think they had decided on the first 3 games that they were always going to do. I'm just trying to find the other ones. They probably have. I guess they have a family. Yeah, Tempest Shared World. It's actually the world that the Love Letter, like when they brought out Love Letter, they put it in their same world. But really, they ended up only doing 4 games. They had Courtier, which was a Philip Dubarry sort of title. There was Dominare, which is definitely the sort of the heaviest one, but I think also the most interesting one. It had all these interesting sort of multiple power cards that I'd still like to play it, actually. I haven't really played it, but depending on when you played it in the game, they'd have different powers, which I think was very cool. And it basically introduced like all these different characters. And then they had Mercante, which, as far as I can understand, I think I played it once, but it's a pretty standard, like, you know, trading kind of game. And there's like lots of goods, and yeah, I definitely like to look back on it. Actually, I wonder if you can get copies of it now. You probably can, actually. I know they were kind of liquidating it, but yeah, and the point basically was that you would have these, you know, these same like houses and characters, and they'd use similar art across the games, and they invited designers to. They had this like portal made for like prospective designers with all the art assets and all the information about the world, and they encouraged designers to submit games that were designed for this world, essentially. And it was really interesting. It was that, like, I don't think I've ever seen something quite like it in terms of like a publisher, you know, really thinking about this sort of world that they're going to put shared games in, and then actually opening that up to the design community and asking designers to, you know, try and contribute or to think about games. The unfortunate thing is I understand is I think the series kind of flopped. so they didn't continue it, which was a bit sad. I mean, of course, the most successful one was Love Letter, but of course that was just imported and put into the theme. Canalis was the only one that was released after the kind of original, like the original set of designs, but then yeah, they didn't do very well after that, which is a bit of a pity actually. Yeah, I think it was a really great idea, Rory. I think unfortunately the games just weren't. Yeah, they had this like Tempest game developer program. Yeah, as I said, unfortunately the Chef's World failed to generate lasting interest. I think. Yeah, I mean, yeah, and they had this cool way that they can like all link together. You see how they, you know, had, yeah. I think it was quite cool, and I would still like to. I'd still like to try Dominaria. I think it was. I think it's a very interesting game idea, and especially when I was reading the rules, I think I was most interested by it. Courtier is kind of like a blind bidding, a little bit like Revolution from Philip de Barry. But yeah, I think this one was most interesting. But the problem was that it was also like 3 hours long or something. It was like just a bit too long for what it was. So yeah, ultimately they didn't find the thing. And I guess the only other thing I'd say in retrospect is that it's not exactly the most original kind of theme. If you're going to make an interesting shared world, then you know probably make it stand out a little bit more. But yeah, in this folder that I found with old game ideas, I had like been working on a game for that. Yeah, and I didn't end up doing any of them. Rob said never tried any of the games. I remember them being received pretty warmly, but didn't manage to hit the excitement levels. Yeah, I think the probably I don't know. The other problem was maybe that the games themselves are also quite different, and maybe that's also telling you something about shared worlds. Like there is a reason maybe that Ryan Locat's games, which you know a lot of them are in this shared world. You know, they're not only in a shared world, but they're also roughly in the same like the same level of like complexity or same styles of games. So you know, generally the audience that likes the game will like the theme. You know, like nothing becomes jarring between mechanics and theme. And maybe that was the other thing that ultimately it's better to work with one like a few designers. Like it was great that they opened it up, but maybe they had to be much more like thinking about like what types of games fit, because like Courtier was very take that kind of like blind bidding ish. Meccane was a very like Euro trading game, so that like I can't see that necessarily they would all like the same thing. And they also had all different player counts, I think, also if I remember, which I think is also a bit of a problem. Like I would think that you would try and make the games have the same player count. It wasn't like, no, actually you're right. Like West Kingdom, yeah, that's a very good point. That is, no, Shem's done a very good job in that. Yeah, that's actually probably a good. I guess the difference with this was that they were kind of opening it up to designers could apply for it. Yeah, but that's actually a really good point. That like I think Shem Phillips stuff obviously is a great shared world but different games. We were working. I mean, the game that became Scorpius Freighter with AEG, when we originally signed it, it looked like it was going to be part of a trilogy of games that we would design. In fact, we have finished the second one, which will probably never see the light of day, but the idea was to have them not only linked in the same world, but mechanically, like what would happen in the first game would then feed into the second game. But at some point, it was decided just to not do that anymore, and they just published the first one, changed the theme completely, pretty much, published Scorpius Raider, and then yeah, the second game I think will never get published, sadly, which is a bit of a pity. Alex says Fowler's games have a loosely similar, quite varied experience. Yeah, I mean it's. Every publisher will take their own approach to it. I think I just remember it's just kind of interesting how they, in this case, just opened it up for people to sort of like to kind of designers to submit things. I think it's an interesting kind of challenge. Yeah, so yeah, it's reminding me I should try and have a look and see if I can get a copy of Dominaria. Maybe I'll reach out to AG and see. Yeah, I remember being quite interested by it anyway. Yeah, so, well, thanks everyone who's been dropping by. I see we've got Zate. I miss saying good morning. Good morning. Hope you're well. And Nicholas meeting with Alex Cannon to talk about our Bez Jam game. Excellent. And Rory's also working on a Bez Jam game and some PRA teamwork. Sounds great. So, yeah, it sounds like this game jam is being very productive. I missed a question. Rob said, "Did any of the mechanisms you tried out in your early experiments get incorporated in something later?" Well, that is a stream all of itself. I suspect. I mean, yeah, I would have to look quite closely. I suspect not actually. A lot of these, and I mean that was my problem when I was a young designer. But especially around this time, I seem to remember, like in 2012, 2013, I had this problem of like starting a lot of games and not finishing anything, essentially. So a lot of these things have like one prototype or like, you know, the first thing made, and then I would abandon it. And it would mean that you just don't, yeah, you don't get to anything interesting if you don't sort of stick with it. And that means that you don't necessarily have like very good, like much interesting things going on. And yeah, but I definitely will have a look. I mean, who knows? There might be something, you know, but we, you know, we will see. It would be, yeah, it would be cool to look back actually. Yeah, there were some interesting ideas there, certainly. Yeah, so no, we'll see. I mean, I'm sure there was something I did sort of subconsciously, and I brought that back in, but yeah, anyway, we shall see. We shall see. Yeah, yes, no, the snow is very much still here, although it is. I think it's melting a bit. Yeah, it's sort of strange, but I guess the skylights probably get a bit of like warmth from the inside, so they melt more quickly. I think the plan is to actually go outside today and see a little bit of the outside world, and we need to do some shopping. So I haven't been outside for a little while, so I'll fully experience the cold, which my poor Australian body is not prepared for at all. But we'll see how that goes. Yeah, but yeah. What else in the game, on the game side? What things are going on? Lurk away, Nicola. Hope you have a good day. I am. Well, we have some. Well, I always have meetings. Just thinking, looking at what, you know. Actually, it reminds me, I should really try this star maps, and blood broils. I'm going to leave that open. It's just, yeah, it's just a pity that it's. I also never really had a printer, but now I do have a printer. So I think I will. Yeah, I will actually try out those games. It's, you know, it's I had them so long ago. Yeah, I wonder if they're doing anything more like Spiel Press. I think it was such a good idea, but I think they just. Yeah, they just didn't do anything more, it seems, unfortunately. Yeah, I'm just sort of looking at. Yeah, they don't really have. Oh, it's interesting. They say that they're. Yeah, the Spiel Press says that they had one in 2019. They had one book, but they're looking for a second book to kind of pair it up with. Maybe I'll reach out to them and see what they're doing. Yeah, interesting. Yeah, well, opportunity for anyone else to, yeah, the Spiel Press. It's Spiel Press on Twitter, for example. Yeah. So in terms of plans, actually, I don't have such crazy. Trying to think. Oh yes, we're doing a pitch with Asmodee tomorrow for a sort of children's game idea that I did with Theo, and we'll see how that goes. It'll be the first time sort of pitching to sort of like Asmodee Central, I guess. I'm still trying to work out what's you know, understanding how all those different studios in Asmodee fit together. But Theo knows that a little bit better than I. Alex asks, have you always done mostly digital prototyping? Well, I guess it wasn't digital. I mean, like I would make files, which I then would print out and play. I guess I'm not and it's just my artistic abilities are so poor that like drawing, handwriting things is just never a good idea. You can barely read my handwriting is not particularly like it's not very readable for a game, and I think I got pretty early at the doing it digitally to make something to print out was quicker even than scrolling it out. I still think the problem a little bit is that I'm not sure if being creative, like sitting in front of the computer, is my best way of being creative. So sometimes I still would you know, I would have like my notebook, and I would write ideas in it, and then I would sit down on the computer and type them up, kind of thing, or make into a digital, you know, file or something like that. But yeah, I guess I mainly worked like with files and then printed them off and things like that, because it's just clearer. And of course, the nice thing is that they kind of, there is a bit of a digital archive. I mean, there's also like a huge archive of my notebooks as well, which hopefully there's matches up in terms of like the ideas I was talking about. But even with my notebooks, when I look back, I can't even read them sometimes, which is, you know, for me, the act of writing the notebook again is almost an act of reflection. It's not an act of like recording. It's an act of just the act of writing gets me thinking about the ideas. It's not even necessary that I need to look back at them again, which is interesting. But I probably should also improve my handwriting somehow. But I mean, it's not that bad. But I think it's just a mixture. When you're writing in your notebook, you're sort of following a train of thought. So my handwriting is also affected by, because I'm not kind of focusing on the writing, I'm like thinking at the same time, which is, yeah, it's a bit funny. Alex says, my design workflow really improved when I bought blank cards and Sharpies. Okay, yeah. I mean, I think that it's very different. I know Bez, for example, a lot of her games start, you know, with blank cards and Sharpies, and I mean, and she obviously does really fun illustrations and things. Yeah, I think finding your way, like, you know, there's no one right way. Find the way that works for you, and if it is the one true thing that is sometimes not making something digital to start with lets you get to the point of playing it much quicker. You know, you're not assembling anything. You're literally making the cards immediately, and then you can start playing with them. I think just the way that my mind works is that if I make a few cards, and I've done this sometimes, like I have a new idea and I get a few blank cards out, I write on them, and I kind of move them around. But that doesn't, if I don't have enough of the game sort of done or like there, or like sort of present in that prototype, then I find it hard to kind of like extrapolate from like moving a few cards around. So like that activity doesn't help me that much in terms of moving ahead in the design. So I tend to, yeah, I need to sit down on the computer and like make 30 cards and think about how do they fit together, or like, do I have the right distribution, or at least a plausible distribution. You know, it doesn't have to be the right distribution, but something that is like a good kind of like starting point. I think I value like maybe putting a little bit more effort into that starting point. But again, that's how I work now. Obviously, you can see that in like all these digital prototypes I did, you know, many years ago, I would make a prototype and I wouldn't follow through on it, or I would make one version, I wouldn't iterate. So, you know, that approach to do digitally now makes sense because I know how to kind of, or like I have more experience in following through. But you know, that I think that was missing earlier in my designing. Morning, Jay. How are you going? Welcome. Yeah, so I think find what's works for you, and yeah, breaking down the barriers to make that first prototype is important. If that means, yeah, buying some Sharpies and some blank cards, then that's a really good idea. And the blank cards are really good. You know, when I do make some, I have made some card games where I'm vividly remembering we used to, Brett and I sometimes would set aside like a weekend where I would go and stay with Brett, and we kind of would game jam, actually. I guess it was like a mini game jam without really thinking about it. Now that I think about it, normally I would come to the weekend having like a little list of ideas that I'd sort of been thinking about, that I thought, and then we would sort of go through them and try them, and we'd talk about them. If something hit, then we'd try to make a prototype very quickly. And yeah, I had a blank card prototype, like blank, you know, writing on blank cards for one of these things that the game eventually is going to be published by Libelud. Not this year, it looks like now. It'll be next year. But yeah, so that was successful. There were quite a few games that came out of those game jams now that I think about it. And that worked out really well. Rob's saying, I sometimes find that just rating existing games is an effective way of trying it out. That's where having shelves of too many games can pay dividends. Yeah, exactly. I mean, I have like 3 plastic tubs of components, so I'm never short of having things to sort of move around. But yeah, I guess, I mean, in my undergraduate career, I did a research project into learning styles. Like some people like to learn visually or audio through orally, or like kinesthetically, like kind of moving things around with their hands, or like reading and writing and things like this. And you know, when you find the way that you learn, that that's the way you want to kind of consume information or record information. And I think I'm very much in the kind of like the writing kind of reading, writing kind of side. So for me, like the kind of making things up and like moving around bits doesn't necessarily do it for me. But for other people who are kinesthetic learners, then that's very useful. So again, that's why I sort of say it's not just about finding your way of designing, it's finding about your way of even how you like to consume information. How do you like to sort of, or synthesize information? How do you like to put it together? And that's not always about writing things. It's not always about reading things. It can be listening to things, or it can be talking about things, or it can be moving things around with your hands. So yeah, I think the main rule is just find what works for you. And early on, that can mean trying, just trying to do things in different ways, because, you just got to try a bunch of things, and then you'll hopefully recognize what seems to work best for you. And then you need to kind of reflect on that and say, well, like what games didn't work and what games did work, and how did I approach those games that did work, and try and sort of like distill out the practices that, because some of it can be very sort of subconscious, I guess, that you succeed with a game and you might not think about why it succeeded. You're like, oh, you're just happy that, oh, I have a game and it works. And but actually looking back and saying, well, what did I do to get there, can maybe help you kind of like sort of pull out those little processes or little tricks that worked well for you. And then you can actually maybe like consciously try and use them in your next project. But yeah, so yeah, know thyself, or as the phrase goes. But yeah, it's that was a bit of a trip. Yeah, it was a bit of a trip down memory lane, I guess, in terms of thinking how old games are. But there's a huge graveyard of unused ideas or incomplete ideas on my computer and in my notebooks. I don't know if I would ever enumerate how many there actually are. Probably, well, definitely hundreds, if not even up to 1,000 or something like that. But yeah, not short of ideas. And I think that's it. The other thing is, like, the game world kind of moves on, I guess. I'm not completely pushed by trends. But a game that made sense 10 years ago might not make sense now. So I find like that there are definitely what's the word? Declining returns. What's the word? It's not declining. It's like reducing returns or whatever. Or looking at older ideas because they were sort of a product of that time. And also, actually, to be honest, a lot of them are just pretty mediocre mid-weight Euro games that I was trying to make. I was trying to be Steffenfeld, and I couldn't do it. I wasn't, that wasn't ultimately, I think, the style of game that I'm good at designing. But I really wanted to design it, and it's that was a bit of a problem. Yeah, as Alex says, you think you have to follow what's novel to you. Diminishing returns. Thank you. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Well, you have to do what excites you as well, and sometimes it's because it's new or for whatever reason. And we're not robots. We don't sort of go and like, oh, this is it. This sounds like it's a good idea, or I should work on it. No, you work on ideas that are exciting to you and that you want to work on. And as I was sort of talking about a bit on Monday or Tuesday or whenever, I'm trying to adapt a little bit to this idea that it's balancing, making games to make money versus enjoyment, and as I work towards it being actually a job, I do need to make money. So it's finding obviously the happy intersection where you get to work on something you really like that you think will be able to be sold, or that a publisher will make and that will do very reasonably well. But they don't always overlap like that, and there are definitely sometimes projects which, it's just battling with like, do you want to make games that you're not that excited about, but you think are still good projects and could be good games to play. It's just maybe in the design process you're not as sort of excited about them. And also the difference can sometimes it can be very exciting when you don't quite know where you're going, because you're sort of like, oh, I could try this or I could try this. It's sort of like everything's possible. But when sometimes it feels like now that I have projects where I really know where I want to go. I know where the end product needs to be. And that can feel like you don't have that same excitement because you kind of know where what the answer is, and you just have the hard work of how to get there, which can sometimes actually be even more frustrating because you don't have the freedom to just try anything because you have these constraints you need to fit into. I'm working on a new game for the Dice Hospital kind of line with Alika. I mean, it's not signed. The way we kind of work is that,
you know, if they have ideas or they have ideas of a product they think they might want. And that's what happened with the Dice Hospital Roll and Write. They said like, oh, it'd be great if we had a Roll and Write for Dice Hospital. You know, we didn't, but it wasn't like a formal arrangement that's like, you need to design this game. It was just like, this would be something great that we'd really be interested in publishing. So it's sort of like when publishers say like what kind of games they're looking for. And we took that on. But I like that it's harder because you have this endpoint that you need to reach. But at least the way I like to do it right now is because it's not under contract. If I just can't get it to work, then that's fine. I can just say I couldn't make the game. I'm sorry, but you know, we didn't sign any contract, so there's no, you know, there's no expectation. There's no, and same things happening with the current game. Although I think I'm confident that with the current game, I'll reach something that is finished. It's, you know, enough of it is done, or at least the core idea works. So I'm happy with that. But it's interesting as a sort of, as a business side, you know, you kind of want to work with contracts. You want to work with a publisher saying, yes, make this game. We've contracted you. We will publish it. It's legally, you know, binding or whatever. It's a lot more risky to sort of have this sort of like, you know, vague oral. No, it's not even oral agreement. It's just indication of, oh, this is a game we would be interested in. But yeah, it's balancing kind of the safety of that versus the flexibility in being able to say, well, I just can't make this game, which I've found a little bit working on. I mean, I've never had a complete failure. I think of all the kind of games which are somewhat, they're not like licensed games, they're like games where you're trying to really make something quite specific for a publisher. Actually, some of the German companies do it a little bit differently, where you will pitch something like a 1 to 2 page pitch document, and then they'll kind of decide for that, so you don't have to make a huge game to work out whether they want to make it or not, which is also a good way to do it, I think. Yeah, but there's just different ways you can think about sort of targeting like opportunities, I guess, opportunities for publishers looking for games and things like that. Yeah. But I mean, thankfully, I think that's why it's also a really exciting time. There's so many new publishers popping up, and there's so many different, like the breadth of what we consider to be board games, and you know, like the huge growth in narrative games and roll rights that we've been talking already. You know, shows that there's just this wider breadth of what is considered a game, what's a publishable game, and there's just, yeah, there's lots of really great opportunities, which is nice, which is really great. Thanks very much for the questions, Alex, by the way. It's nice to, yeah, and helps things move along. Do I often work with new publishers? Not really. I mean, I work with new publishers to me, but I've never been involved with a publisher where I'm really like their first game, for example. I'm actually just now going to have a very quick look at my shelves and see, no, I like most of the publishers we worked with, or I've worked with, are pretty established. When I made Ice Team with the Flying Games, Ice Team was like their third game, but they're already pretty experienced. And you know, you're working with Bruno Cavallo as well, who's also like a designer, but very experienced on the publishing side as well. I'm not against it, and if any publishers ever want to, you know, reach out and you know, I'm really happy, and in some ways working with new publishers could be great, because they're, you know, it's you know, they're your publisher's first or second game. That's very special to them. That's a very important thing, and they pour a lot into that, and that can be amazing. So yeah, I'm definitely open to it. It's just maybe I'm not as good as sort of being plugged into the grapevine of like opportunities, or I'm not as much like in the community. I always wonder, I mean, it's not a, what's the word? I mean, I feel part of the design community, but I'm not kind of like one of the regulars that people kind of talk about. And I'm not saying that, I mean, I'd be love if people talk about me all the time, but I just think in terms of when people think about like, oh, I'm a publishing company, who are some designers I can reach out to? I'm not sure if I would like feature on those lists where people go like, oh yeah, I know these designers. You know, I think of people like Scott Alms, for example, or like, I mean, obviously you have even bigger people like Eric Lang and like Matt Leacock and Rob Davio, you know, these like very famous people. But yeah, even people like Scott Alms, or like, you know, next level down, where I think, you know, they, for whatever reason, they're kind of well known, or that, you know, and that's great. They're sort of known by the community. I don't think, for whatever reason, I've never kind of broken through. I don't know whether it's like a US European thing, or you know, I see a lot of like US Twitter and like media, but I'm not in the US, so it's sort of this weird disconnect. And you know, even this is it's really nice, but we're very much like a European UK kind of community, which is cool. Jay said it seems to be new publishers often is created to bring a certain game to market. Yeah, that is true. That these new publishers sort of pop into being, but it's not always the case. And sometimes, you know, sometimes a publisher will have one game, but they really would like to launch with a few games, or they would like to have, you know, they want to start with a bit of a line, or so I think there are opportunities in some cases. But you're right. Like, I mean, I guess it's also finding a way to, you know, because like a publisher will announce their first game, but then they need, you know, a few more games to follow that up, and sometimes you need to decide on those games before you even announce the first one. But then the publisher hasn't really been announced, so it's sort of like it's a little bit of word of mouth sort of thing, I think. So who are they? I know Matt doesn't like them. It's very kind of you. Alex says, I think a lot of publishers are formed by frustrated, confident designers. That's true, and you're seeing it a little bit. Like there was that new, what are they called? Like Rose Gauntlet Games, which is Isaac Vega from, you know, formerly of Plaid Hat, and there's the Corey Knizia company as well. So I think they're kind of quite specific instances where, you know, in those cases, these people, they're not just designers, they were sort of heavily involved within the publishing side of bigger publishers or other publishers. So you can kind of see easily why, you know, you might spin out and want to kind of do your own thing, but you've kind of got all those skills already. And I think that's great. I'm still glad that the industry is in such a way that you can, as a sole person, set up a company, make a game, make a new company, and yeah, like a good percentage of those companies might never release a second game, but it means that it's still possible to get, you know, new voices and new blood in the industry, and you keep seeing, you know, not everything's going to push the boundaries, but some of it will, and I think the industry kind of moves forward as a whole because of that. So I'm glad that there's still that sort of lower barrier to entry. And again, I think the quality of games is just going up and up and up. And you know, as I was talking about with Cardboard Edison entries, you know, the average quality is just very high. Actually, I think in terms of published and unpublished games, which is really promising. And so it's good that publishers are coming out to bring more of those things to market. And you realize that you can make a game, and with Kickstarter you can reach, you know, an audience of 2,000 people, and that's enough for some, you know, for a game to be published. And that's great. That's really great that it, you know, it can find, you know, you're just able to find your audience. I think most games can have an audience. Maybe it's not very big, but previously, you know, in the normal distribution method, it's just really hard to find that audience. So publishers didn't want to make that risk to publish a game that maybe only 2,000 people like, because how do you find those 2,000 people? But now you have Kickstarter, and you can do that. And you like Travis Hill's, you know, stuff with the Q Rails game, Print and Play, and seeing that kind of blow up. And, you know, you get new voices, new ideas, and the technology like Kickstarter really helps that happen. So yeah, I'm overall quite like positive and sort of optimistic about things, and that's why I think overall, as you know, it's good to step back and not get too. I'm not frustrated, you know, but it's just sometimes you have days where you're just doing a lot of like work and answering emails, and you're like, oh my gosh, these projects never end. But you know, just you take a step back and you're like, oh, actually, yeah. It's a really fun time to be making games. I'm really glad, like, I'm here right now in this moment. So I feel very fortunate for that, certainly. Alex says, I was half considering self-publishing a series of puzzle murder mystery letters. A small control format like that might be manageable, but for a box game, there seems so much to consider. That sounds really cool. I think I've seen, when I visited Traveling Man in the UK, they always had these like envelopes. I think there are a couple of other things that are a bit like that, where they're sort of like envelopes, but that would be amazing. Yeah, I agree. Like for anything more than that, there's a lot to consider. But I have always thought about like mail by like something that could fit in a standard envelope. I think that sounds much more manageable in terms of costs and that kind of format. And I think that's actually kind of really cool. So yeah, go for it, Alex. I would say. Rory says, shout out to Drander. Oh yes, exactly. Simon. Yeah, Simon who pops by every now and then. I know they're actively looking for commissions. And they've been great to work with from a graphic designer perspective. Okay, great. That's really great. Yeah, Drander is quite new. They've only just announced their second game, and and yeah, Simon Milburn, who is the head of Drander, also works with Alicat, and is a great person. So yeah, as Alex says, Simon can also corroborate that it is lovely. So yeah, check out Drander. I can find one of their games here. Drander. They're all sort of solar, not solo. They had like solar kind of themed games. Yeah. Where are we? Here we go. Here's Drander games. And yeah, Solar Storm was the first game they had published, which is sort of cooperative sci-fi kind of game. So yeah, looks super cool. And yeah, they've announced one new game like Dyson Sphere or something, I think. Oh, maybe they have 7 games. Oh no, these are all Solar stuff. Solar. Oh, Solar Sphere. Yeah, this is the one that's just been announced, which also looks very cool. Yeah. So yeah, definitely things to check out. Yeah. Yeah, an envelope. Yeah, well, maybe that's something to check. You know, you should try out for the game jam or something. Try and do an envelope game. Sounds like a good constraint to sort of work with. Alex, do you know something about the logo? Is there something I don't know? Rory, did you do the logo, or is there something? Is there something I don't know? I'm trying to bring it up a bit. Anyway. Yeah, so we're slowly coming up on the hour. About 5 minutes, I guess. We'll be heading over, as always, to say hi to Bez. We'll be rating Bez. Come the hour. She's been quite on time, I think, generally. So I imagine we'll be heading over there. I think she'll be game jamming. Might be with Reader Modal today. Someone can correct me if I'm wrong. I thought that was probably where it was. But yeah, I hope everyone's going to have a great day, whatever you're up to. Dina and James are today. Okay, great. Oh, interesting. Well, I'll definitely try and watch what I can. I have, I'm just. It's where I check what is my day actually looking like. Oh, I have another meeting quite soon. But so you can repeat all the jokes you want. It's always welcome. Always welcome. Yeah. So what plans? I know. So some folk have talked about that they're going to be working on some more game jam entries for Bez's thing. Oh, there's no one for today. Oh, okay, interesting. So maybe Bez is just working by herself, or continuing the what were they, the Fighting Fantasy books? Oh, yeah. Anyway, just having a quick check. Yeah, I just realized I have another meeting very soon after the stream today, so I have to start mentally preparing a little bit. But I at least put it on at 15:15, so I have a little bit of a break and can have some breakfast or something. So that's good. But I already pushed out a bit of adventure game stuff this morning, which is good. I'm trying to be. I'm very much a morning person, so I'm desperately trying to be more productive in the morning because I normally wake up fairly early, and I have like 1 or 2 hours usually in the morning that I mostly waste, to be honest, especially in the middle of, I'm a bit peak pandemic at the moment, like really just same place, move from bed to desk and back again. But I'm trying to be a little bit more productive in the mornings at least. So we'll see. Alex, I hope you're okay. I hope that it would be a very strange thing if you had an accident, but while having the accident, you put an exclamation into the Twitch chat. But I hope you're well. Anyway, yeah, but we shall see. So hopefully, yeah, Zaid, if you could tell me when Bez is on, I guess she'll be on in 4 or 5 minutes. But it's always easier. It's sort of hard to see in the stream manager. Sometimes it doesn't always come up in the raid channel thing. So it's just good to know when somebody is in fact online. Yeah, and maybe I'll be back on. So I'm
as always, streaming on Friday. Not sure what we'll be doing on Friday. Probably working on, maybe I'll show working on the Game Jam game that I was working on with Alan and Bez, or we'll go back to continents, which I have thought actually that I really want to change to get rid of the animals altogether, because the more and more I think about it, the more and more I like just the idea of this interesting land masses and how does the water break things up and sort of constructing that in sort of a fun way. So I think the next iteration, when I get to it on stream, is going to be getting rid of the animals altogether. So there will be no habitats. It will definitely, and it will fit the name continents quite well. So that's the sort of rough plan. I don't know whether it'll be Friday or not, but Friday seems to have become the working stream or something like that. Yes, Anywhere at All. Yes, the perfect. Yeah, Nicholas came up with this amazing name for our game yesterday called Anywhere at All, and I think we are gonna. That is true. That's what we're going to name it. So no, thank you for that, Nicholas. By the way, I need to write down the rules today just to give them to Alan and Bez and do something like that. Geographical pre-evolution. It's a bit of a what's the word? Mouthful. Yes. Yeah. It could. I think it could look quite nice. And yeah, you're right. Just some very like. And it means then that like for the habitat types or like the land types, yeah, they can be very minimalist and a lot easier to draw, and I can finally move away from this like numbers and shapes and letters and things. So I overall I think it's good. The main thing I'm struggling with at the moment, and I'm trying to kind of think about before I get on stream, because I might find it hard to think about on stream, is the way to kind of generate the choice about where you're putting things and the kind of, but mixed with the kind of randomness of tension of where the water is going to spring up, because I think that's where the game will live or die, is about deciding about when do you really have to worry about the water might disrupt your plans and things like that. Or at least I think that's where the interest is. So I am trying to come up with different ways that could work, but we shall see. We shall see what we shall see. Or maybe you'll see on Friday and you'll help me out, which would be much appreciated as well. So yeah, we'll see what goes on. Land Ahoy, yeah. I mean, it's a bit of a sort of a pirate. Yeah, it's sort of trying to get it away from the piratey kind of thing. So it's like, or maybe like primordial soup or something, like, you know, continents rising out of the oceans in the very early Earth or something like that. Oh, that's a ding of reminding me of the meetings that I have to be in. Yeah. So, well, thank you all as always for dropping by the stream. I hope it was an enjoyable way to start your day. I hope you will have a fantastic Wednesday wherever you are, whatever you're doing. Stay safe and warm, I guess, if it's as cold where you are as it is here. And what was I going to say? Glad. Oh yes, I love the name. Michael, yeah, maybe that's your job, Nicholas. You're the name maker. I'm terrible at making names, as is well evidenced in the streaming so far. So always happy to get any help from that. So yes, let's go over and say hi to Bez, and yeah, we shall see how we go. Is Bez on? Yes. Oh yes, Bez is on. So let's head over there. Take care. Have a great day, everyone. Thanks again, and see you on Friday, if not earlier. Great. Let's go. Yeah, it looks like it's now, it can, for a while it was looking like the raids were always like zero people, but now it seems to be more correct. Great. All right. Thanks, everyone. Bye.